Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. You know, often on my show, I talk about community and helping other people and understanding where people are in their life and helping them when they're in their good times and in crisis. You know, oftentimes we don't really know where to begin. We don't know how to start. We see somebody going through a tough time, through a challenge, overcome by adversity or something else in their life that's trial and tribulations. However, we don't really know how to help them. You know, oftentimes we find ourselves saying, let me know what I can do, but we don't really actually know what that means, and we don't know if they'll even take us up on it for that matter. And so it's a very interesting dichotomy of issue that we find ourselves in when we want to help somebody else, but we don't know where to begin. So, you know me, I've got to find the expert on this when I'm looking about topics and figuring out exactly what we need to do, how to bring our community together, how to figure out what we can do with somebody in crisis, and really how to understand the levels of relationships and what that means when it comes to helping somebody overcome adversity or get through a tough time in their life. Joining me live on Live Your True Life Perspectives is Sarah Beckman. Sarah is the author of Alongside, a practical guide for loving your neighbor in their time of trial. She's also an author, a national speaker, a blogger, a communications coach, and her second book is coming out next year. Sarah, it's great to have you in studio today. How are you doing?
Doing great, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad to have you on the radio because we're going to be talking today about community and about society, about helping our neighbors, and this is something that is near and dear to my heart. I live in a building. I know every single person in that building. I know their kids. I know their grandkids. I have an office, a few blocks down from there that I know everybody on the street. I'm there, when somebody's sick or somebody's hurt, we're always there kind of circling the wagons around. And it's been something that I've always done and kind of the way, I guess, to some degree I was raised. But I was looking at your book Alongside, a practical guide for loving your neighbor in their time of trial. And I find it very interesting because you really talk about exactly how to help, what to do, and kind of the stuff that gets in the way of, I think, us jumping in to help. So, when we talk about community, how do you feel about the way that our society is today when it comes about trying to help people or trying to facilitate kind of like, helping other people and really kind of creating a synergy in that level?
Yes, well, I think people really struggle, which is one of the reasons why I wrote this book, of course, because lots of times people are paralyzed by maybe just a fear of, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing? What is the right, appropriate, all of the questions that flood our mind the minute that we hear the news, if you will, whether it's divorce or addiction or a suicide or, a loss of a loved one or cancer. I mean, it's everywhere we look, and we can't pretend that people don't need us. So I think people, as a whole, our society shies away from reaching out because of sort of a paralyzation of, I don't know what to do. So I think that people don't have a compassion problem. They have a confidence problem. And that's really what I tried to address in Alongside, was just how can we equip people so that they'll never have to be paralyzed again, that they would have all the tools at their fingertips so that they could open the book anywhere and put their finger down and know that they could do something today for that person that they care about that's struggling. So, yes, I saw a real need in the community, in the world, in neighborhoods, in schools, in businesses specifically. It's hard for people to reach out in a business place because they think, is that too personal, right? So I think that it's lacking greatly. And maybe if it's your best friend, you'll do something. But then anything beyond that, people are just too worried about, what do I do? I don't know what to do. I'm doing nothing.
I agree with you, Sarah. I feel like oftentimes we get overwhelmed by, one, what are we supposed to do? Two, how much do we put ourselves out there? Are we helping? Are we becoming more of a burden? And I think also the question comes in, how close am I really to this person? And are they looking toward me for help? Or, am I visioning a different level of friendship than we actually have?
Right. Yeah. I mean, but at the same time, I think that we can always offer, right? And then if we offer something, it's their choice. But I think we err when we make the decision on someone else's behalf about what they need or where we are in their life. And, that keeps us from interceding or, putting ourselves in a situation where we might be able to really provide hope and encouragement and just practical help for someone in a dark place.
And we often hear when we hear the statement, it's about walking in someone else's shoes and being able to figure out what they've gone through. And, one of the things I've struggled throughout my life, and I've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations beginning as a young child. And that was one thing that I always wanted to help with, is that I figured, in order to get out of myself and all of self was to help other people in their trials and tribulations. Not only is that a direct awesomeness as far as giving back to your life and to feel good, but it also puts into perspective. And also we learn in the process, I feel. Right.
Well, and like you said, there is not really a better way to get out of your own self and whatever you're going through than to step out of your comfort zone and just step someone else's life, because it's just so... It's freeing. It takes our mind off our own troubles. And then a lot of times we can use our troubles for good. That's really also another reason why I ventured into this project, was because in my own life, I had 4 back surgeries in 6 years, and I was on bed rest with my daughter, and I had 3 close family and friends that had terminal illness that died within 3 years, like 1, 2, 3. And so part of why I endeavored to write this book was because I had a decade of hardship, and I felt like I learned a lot, and I wanted to share it with other people, and I wanted them to be equipped and benefit from what I learned. But also it was a way to turn sort of the pain and the struggle and the suffering that I'd endured into something positive, where people could then love others well in those dark places. And I mean, it's such an isolating thing to go through a trial. And then when all your friends and family step back from you because they're worried and they don't know what to do, then in your very worst, darkest time, you're even more isolated.
I agree with you. And we've seen what happens when people isolate themselves, especially in a depressed moment, overcoming the death of a loved one. Isolation and being isolated is kind of one of the number one no-nos, as a therapist, as a psychologist, that I see when people begin to isolate, that can lead to a bigger situation. But one of the things I find interesting is about our society, at least in America, is we don't seem to, and I know this sounds odd, but we don't seem to praise our elderly. It's like, we have older folks' homes, retirement homes, but in other places around the world, our elderly is with us, oftentimes living with us or in community. And I find that we're more of a disposable society than many other societies. And I find that crisis is a very interesting point, because it can very much bring people together or kind of scare people off?
Right. Yeah, and the aging society, I mean, I just think of how many people I know that are facing that with their parents. You know, my mom is 90 years old, and we're just having the conversation, thankfully, at 90 about, you know, where she might live besides her house. But, you know, I have a huge family, and even in that huge family, we still struggle with, like, differing opinions on her future. And so I think you're spot on. I mean, revering our elders, honoring, respecting, caring for them in a way where we lift them up and, you know, honor them in just a profound way instead of just, okay, check the box, you know, mom, dad, you know, grandma, they're in their care facility and they're off my hands, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is actually, I wrote a whole chapter about when someone's aging, because I just know so many people that are struggling with this. And I have one friend specifically who said, if I only picked up this book just to read the chapter about the aging parents, that's what I needed the most. Like, her dad has Alzheimer's and she's navigating, you know, her mom in denial and her dad just, you know, deteriorating. And she's just learned the principles of coming alongside her parents and not making it about her, but really making it about them and what do they need and how can I help them in this time? How can I best serve them and cherish them? And one of the things for her is that instead of just when they ask questions or they need something, you know, she's started to dedicate one day a week to going over and just being present and sitting with her dad and going through the things, even if it's the 40th time that they've gone through the same thing. She just goes over and is completely present and with them, and recognizing that that's so important to just show up.
Let me ask you a question, Sarah. I think you probably have a lot of wealth of knowledge on this when it comes to helping somebody that's been a caretaker for a long time, like you were saying, maybe with somebody that has Alzheimer's and gone through that for years, and the caretaker's been there and things have changed and the person has passed on. How can you really help a person who's been a caretaker for a long period of time, who's kind of been in that role so long that they don't even know how to stop caretaking? You know what I'm saying? You know, when somebody has been doing it for years and years and they've been putting their own health and well-being on the back burner. How do you help somebody like that?
Oh, that is such a great question. And I was, you know, I mean, I wasn't a primary caretaker, but I had a best friend who had leukemia for 5 years. And I was like a critical, pivotal linchpin in the, you know, the web of people that were helping their family. They had 3 kids and, you know, busy young kids and lives. And when she died, I really struggled. I really, really struggled because there was a huge void. And it was exactly what you just said. The void was, I was so used to waking up each day thinking about what they needed, their family and her specifically. And then all of a sudden she was gone. And so this identity that I had created of being needed and being a vital part of their journey was just missing. And of course I had my own family and my own husband and my own life, but it was so difficult. So how can we help people? Number one, I think that we need to recognize that those caretakers are people that we need to come alongside. So sometimes we need to come alongside the person actually like that's sick, right? If that's our example, you know, the person that has cancer. But the other thing that's very critical for us as a community to look at is who are the people around that are also struggling. So I had some really dear friends that recognized that not only was her family grieving, but I was grieving. And so they reached out to me, they wrote me cards, they brought me flowers, they remembered me, they, you know, expressed that they realized how hard it was for me to lose her even though she wasn't my sister or my mom, but she was a best friend. But caretakers, every rule and every guideline alongside of how to come alongside someone, it totally applies to a caretaker as well. And I think that when a loved one is gone, we have to keep remembering. That's my number one piece of advice, is we can't forget that they're still hurting. Just because the person's gone doesn't mean the pain is gone. Mm-hmm. So we need to still reach out to them. We need to offer to take them to dinner. We need to encourage them. In my case, I ended up in counseling after 9 months because I ended up with a panic attack, anxiety in the emergency room because I had not dealt with my grief about losing my friend. And, only counseling was what helped me really process through my grief. So I think keeping eyes open and being intentional about checking in on caretakers when they're still caretaking and after the person is gone is so vital. And then it's not just over in 6 weeks or 4 weeks or 2 weeks after the funeral, right? The pain keeps going, and we need to remember, put it in your phone. Every month, check in on the 3rd of the month, just so that you know that you aren't forgetting about your friend or your loved one who is still grieving. That's so important to keep remembering.
That's so true, Sarah, because I think a lot of times, because of the way that the news and the media is coming at us at such a rapid rate, as how our lives seem to be spiraling so quickly, it seems like we get overwhelmed by media, information, responsibilities, whether it's taking the children here or there or going to work or working 80-hour weeks and then compiling that and forgetting or assuming that things go by so fast. And I feel that grief is such an independent, individual thing. And one of the things that I find too is, you're right, when the funeral's over, it seems like everybody disperses. And I was talking about that on the phone earlier today. It's like, everybody's there during the funeral, they're there during the wake, bringing food and what have you. And then the next thing 2 days later, you can hear a pin drop.
Right. They're all gone.
And that's got to be overwhelming, and I think when we can actually help somebody, it's not only helping them, but it's helping ourselves, because we're all going to go through this at some point,
Absolutely.
And once we actually help somebody kind of walk through that, and also it's obviously to help them, but if you think about it, when we help other people in a time of need, it helps us grow through the process, and it also helps us learn what to do and what not to do, but also it makes it more familiar for us. And I think when the time comes, it becomes easier to deal with.
No doubt about it. I've learned so much in the trenches of loving other people in their hard places that I'm definitely more equipped when my own hard places come. And I have, like I said, I have a big family. I'm the youngest of 14 kids. And
wow.
right. Yeah. Right. And
14 kids. Wow.
Yep. Yep. 7 boys, 7 girls. I'm the youngest. All natural birth, all one mom and dad.
Wow.
So, right. But right now, at this very moment, there's 3 people in my family that are going through really big stuff. Really big stuff. And so, it's just, you can't escape it. But I've learned so much, even just walking with friends or neighbors or my own situations, that I have a different compassion level and care and concern level and a confidence. I have a confidence to reach out. My brother just announced that he's getting divorced, and we're not like super, super close, but I knew that I had to reach out. I had to do something, because people are afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to call. They're afraid to reach out. They're afraid to invite him. They just don't know what to say or what the situation is. And so I just texted him, said, I'm thinking about you. My door is open. You're a great dad. I just a simple 4-line text. And, he responded about 5 days later, which of course my job is not to be offended, because that's another thing that people do. in crisis. They text someone and then they get real mad that they didn't answer them back. Well, they're in crisis. Mm-hmm. They're not worried about getting back to you. And there's a chapter in the book called It's Not About You. And it's this gentle reminder to people that you don't get to be offended. It's someone else's crisis, and your job is to be there for them, not worry about you. And if they thanked you, or if they answered you quickly, or if they appreciated you, that's not your job. Your job is to just love and serve and make it about them, not you. So anyhow, of course, I was not offended. It took him 5 days to answer me. It was just a simple thank you. And then this morning, like you, right before we got on the phone, he called me. Mm-hmm. And we haven't talked on the phone in a long time. So
that's cool.
It's just, so interesting how, like, when people do reach out, those people in trial in our life, they are starving for someone to just be real with, and that they know they can trust and count on. And we don't have to have all the magic answers. We just have to show up and try.
That's cool. I agree with you. It's like what you said. It's not about you.
Right.
It's not. And yeah, we have a tendency of being, oh, well, they don't care, or oh, I put myself out there and they're just too busy to respond. But in reality, you're right. When I've been in crisis mode, I'm not even looking at the phone. You know,
right.
I mean, you're not even thinking about that. You're just trying to get through it, figure out what you got to do next to survive the next minute, the next hour, the next day. And then when you finally emerge, you know, whether it's, you know, you look at the phone before you're going to bed, at the bathroom, or finally you look at it and go, oh my God. And it makes all the difference in the world. But I think a lot of times you're right. We get our feelings hurt because we forget we're not the top of that person's list, because they're not even able to think about the fact of who's calling them.
Right, and they've received it, and they've loved your expression of care or your text, but they just don't have the margin or the energy to respond. And it's just we so easily offend. We get so easily offended that it really prevents us from loving people well when we make it about us and not about the person in trial. If you genuinely want to love someone in their hard place, you need to give them so much grace and so much margin and so much, you know, forgiveness if they aren't doing what you expect them to do. You know, sadly, it just went through this week. I was talking to a friend, and she just lost her dad about a month ago. And she texted me back after I just sent her, you know, some encouragement. And I think it was probably 2 weeks. I mean, I don't even know. I didn't really keep track of how many days, but it wasn't like the next day that she got back to me. So then when she responded, I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot. I sent that message to her a while ago. And she said, you know, sorry, I'm just catching up to my phone. And thank you for understanding, because I just had a friend who basically screamed at me and said that I'm not a good friend because I need to be more respectful of people. And I mean, if I read you this text thread that she told me just happened with a supposed friend, and my friend is grieving her dad, and it's been a month, and her friend is choosing now to tell her that, you know, that's not okay. You need to treat your friends better. And I said to her, she's not a friend if that's the response you're getting. When your dad died and this is your time and it's about you, and so what if you couldn't answer her back or do what she needed you to do? It's not about her.
Yeah, but with a narcissist, I mean, it sounds to me like she's a full-on narcissist. When it's a narcissist, it's all about them.
Right.
I mean, they don't understand. I mean, and that's when it really rears its ugly head, right? When we realize that the person that we've been hanging out with is a full-on narcissist, to the fact that they can't even appropriate the fact that somebody's father's died. And see
can you
that.
Believe it?
Yeah, I mean, that's that's when it becomes really apparent, I think.
Yeah.
Brutally apparent when we begin to realize the people we are spending time with, it's all about them.
Right. Yep. And she, my friend tried to apologize, and but in the end, the friendship definitely just they had it out and the friendship is ended. And that's precisely why I wrote alongside, right? Because I really feel like that's the kind of thing that happened. Like maybe it could have been the converse, where the friend didn't show up for the person that was grieving. And they were like, you didn't even show up for me. You didn't remember me. You didn't call me. You didn't reach out to me. You didn't send me a card, whatever the things are that we expect of people. Mm-hmm. But when they don't know what to do, when they lack confidence, when they're paralyzed by a fear of doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing, and they do nothing, friendships, relationships are lost because of it. And that is the worst possible outcome when life is already tragically hard. To then be losing relationships in the middle of it, just breaks my heart. So it could be either way. It can be the friend not showing up, or it can be the person in trial not giving a friend what they need because they can't and they don't have any capacity in their life. But gosh, some simple things that can be done, and reading a book and figuring out what to do and what not to do, and anyway.
That's interesting because you brought up a good point about let me know what I can do. And I mean, I've said that a lot, where you're on the phone with somebody and they're going through a situation and, mom's dying, dad's dying, they're going into surgery, they just found out they have cancer, the list goes on. And the first thing out of our mouth is that little sentence, let me know what I can do. Let me know what how I can help. But when people have told me that, it's like, I think first off, I don't want to be the burden. Second of all, I don't want to ask them to do something that they don't want to do. And third, I'm like, I'll just take care of it myself. Now, the very few times that I have actually said, hey, let me know what I can do. By the way, if you want me to come by the hospital and drop off XYZ, I can. And when I make it very specific on something I can do, that's not like, I think a lot of times too, we try to do like everything. We're trying to be like Superman. I can do this and I can do that, and I'll drive 200 miles out of my way. I mean, it's like, really? I mean, you don't even live in the same state. I mean, we got to be practical to some degree. But when I have put out intent and then what I can do right now, that's obviously something that they need, they always take me up on it. Yeah, okay, that's awesome. You don't mind? I'm like, well, if I minded, would I brought it up? And then I go and do it, and I take something off their plate. I feel good. They're happy and thankful about it because it's something they don't have to do. And then, hey, if they need me, they can call me or whatever. But then, I feel good about what I've done, I guess. And something has been taken care of that might have added to their stress level had I not had jumped in and said, hey, I can do this.
Right. Yes, there's no better way it's one of the top ways that you can express that you care about someone is to make your offer specific, because you hit it right on the head. When you say the words, let me know what I can do, or let me know how I can help, it puts all the burden on the person that's already in trial to take you up on your offer, to let you know what you can do, to think of something you can do, to, follow up with it. You've just really gone and taken all the work and put it right back on them. And they don't need more work. They don't need more things to do, namely letting you know what you can do. But if you really want to help someone, you need to do the advanced work. You think about, what can I do? What am I able to do? What maybe am I already doing? I'm already going to Costco. I'm already going to the grocery store. I'm already going to Target. What could I pick up for you? Well, then they don't feel like they're such a burden because you were already going. It's kind of how you position it, right?
Right.
So when you do the work as someone who desires to come alongside, to love someone well, you have to be intentional and thoughtful. And when we throw around that phrase, let me know what I can do, it's actually a burden instead of being a help. So you do the work and think about, what can I offer? And then, like you said, everyone wins. And you also hit it right on the head when you said, I'm only going to offer what I can do. And if they came back to me with my generic offer and said, you know what, it would be super great if you could go and pick up my mom from the airport and drive her to my house and then, take her here and do that. Like, what if you don't have a car? What if you have a full-time job and you can't be driving around during the day or don't have time off work? I mean, it's so risky for both of you to say, let me know what I can do. Because if they actually take you up on something that you can't do, then you all of a sudden are in that awkward place of, oh, yikes, now I can't really say no because she asked me and she's in crisis. And I said, let me know what I can do. I mean, it's just a losing recipe for everyone. So when we take the actual initiative to say, I would love to pick up groceries. I would love to take your kids today. I would be happy to drive you to chemo. I would love to help you with the funeral photo boards. I would be happy to help write the obituary. I mean, whatever it is that you feel gifted, called, able to do, and when you offer that, it also gets them thinking like, oh gosh, I didn't even know I would need to do that. That would be great, and it just makes it so much easier for them to accept the help, which is what we want. We want to remove any barrier we can from them actually receiving the help that they need. So specific offers are the number one way to do that.
That makes perfect sense, Sarah. I think, though, too, I love that about offering the option and giving, like you said, you're at the store, you're already here, you're already there. It makes a lot of sense, and it goes a long way. I think sometimes we underestimate, though, the value of that, so we'll sit there and say, well, I'm already here. It's not that big of a deal. And
right.
Don't you think like we underestimate? It's like, why are we underestimating what we're doing? I think it goes back to our self-esteem. Well, I need to do something bigger.
Right. And just like, do we want to be praised, or are our motives in the right place? I mean, that's really a big question we have to ask ourselves when we're coming alongside someone is check your motives at the door. I mean, do you genuinely want to be helpful? Then even the smallest, most benign thing that no one might ever know you did is valuable. But if we're in it for accolades or praise or visibility with our community, then we have the wrong motive. And, we should step aside and really check our motives of why we're loving and serving someone, because it needs to come from a pure heart. And then it won't matter if we're just getting the groceries at Target and we dropped them on the front desk and we never saw the person or got the inside scoop or, right? I mean, There's so many ways that this can trip us up if we're not careful, because we really do have to have a pure motive of helping and just doing what needs getting done to lighten the load just even the smallest bit for someone in trial.
That's so true. I mean, that whole, it's not about the accolades, that is a big deal. And nowadays, sometimes, we're going through stress and strain in our own life and needing a little pat on the back. And this is not the place that you need to look for the pat on the back at. This is not
right.
it.
Right. Well, because you might not get it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I went and drove 200 miles and she didn't even say thank you. Well, you just did that for the wrong reason. If you're waiting for a thank you, I mean, part of the thing I love to do is I love to absolve people of a thank you when I do something, when they're in trial. I just I'll write a note if I bring a meal, if I drive a kid or whatever, I'll send a text, just FYI, part of my gift to you is that consider me thanked. I know you're grateful. You do not have to go above and beyond and, do anything to help me feel better. I'm thanked. I'm forget, all those things. So that's really a nice little gift you can give someone is no thanks required.
I love that. So I want to get into, real quick, I want to talk about the 4 levels of friendship and relationships, because I feel that this affects us in every level of our life, whether it's, calling on somebody, reaching out to somebody, no matter if they're in crisis or not. Our theory and thought process of who somebody is to us in our life really needs to be examined, and then the level of the relationship. And I know in your book you outline the 4 levels of relationships. If you can kind of tell us about that, because I think that'll also help Live Your True Life listeners understand exactly, how they can help, and better yet, to understand maybe where they stand in certain relationships.
Right. Yeah. So I actually this is just a way to categorize the relationship of the friend or loved one in trial, so that then you know what appropriate ways are to express your support. But what I have found over the years is that at any given time, I probably have 10, 15, 20 people in my life that I know that are going through something. And sometimes it feels so overwhelming. And you know that you can't be there for everyone. You know that you can't, tangibly help everyone that's going through something. And so either A, we throw up our hands and just help no one, or B, we try to be superwoman, as you alluded to before, and help everyone. And then we burn out and we sacrifice our families or our jobs or our primary relationships in our life, and no one wins because we're just trying to be the saver of everyone. So to combat that, I created these relationship levels, and like tier 1 is pretty obvious. It's you're a caregiver, you're a close friend or family. They're your people, right? They're your people. And then tier 2 is just the next level down. It's the friend, the neighbor, the coworker, someone that you have a shared interest with. It might be someone that you know from work, but you're like going to lunch with them. It's not like you just know them at work. You do things with them outside of the office, right? And the same with the neighbor, or, it's someone that you talk to or see or invest in. And then tier 3 is just the next level removed from that. It's all the same things. It's friend of a friend or an acquaintance or someone that you know from the office, but you don't interact or work together, or it's someone that you stand on the sidelines with watching your kids in sports, but they're not like in your little group of 4, but you definitely know them, but you're not like close to them. And then tier 4 is just the furthest removed. And that's basically, you don't have a frequent interaction with them. You maybe know them by association, your friend knows them. And by that, oh gosh, I feel so bad because my friend's sister's mom, whatever, but you don't know them. So that's tier 4. And basically what I ask people to do is to really categorize the relationship. So when they hear the news about a trial, you would put yourself in a category and say, are they tier 1, 2, 3, or 4 in my life? And then throughout the book, I've woven together, this is appropriate expression of care if you're a tier 1 or 2. If you're a tier 3 or 4, then maybe this is more appropriate. And so just to give you like an example, maybe someone that's a tier 1 in your life loses a loved one. Well, if you just sent a card, that would be like so impersonal and so offensive if that was all you did to reach out to your tier 1. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They would be like, what? That's all? Or if they get sick and you don't reach out to them or whatever. So, but a tier 3 or 4, like that's kind of even going above and beyond. To like send a card means a lot because it's appropriate for the relationship that you have. Likewise, when someone dies, a tier 3 or 4 should not show up on the doorstep expecting to be let in to sort of that inner circle, right? Mm-hmm. And a tier 1 or 2, yes, definitely get in your car and go, because the one who shows up stands out. But it has to be appropriate to the relationship.
And I think sometimes too, to take it a step further, is when we deal with our own self-esteem issues, we have an issue of realizing maybe how much we matter to people. And in the last, you know what I'm saying? Like in the last 10 years, yeah. I have attended events that I really didn't think that, I was invited to it, but I really didn't think that anybody would realize if I was there or not. And I remember it happened over and over and over again, where you would show up and people would be like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. And you're like, right. Wow. And they're like, you didn't come the last 2 events that I invited you to. And you're thinking, wow, you actually realize that,
Yeah.
That's powerful. And I think maybe to some degree, some of us need to rethink our tier 3 and 4, and at least our tier 3, maybe to really think how close are we? And is it just me that's taking myself out of the equation?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you putting yourself in a tier 3 when they would rather you were a tier 2? And right, like
exactly.
And it really ebbs and flows. I mean, this is an evolution. Like, I have a friend who she was definitely a tier 3 in my life, and her husband died, and I was her neighbor. And so even though we weren't super close and weren't going out on the weekends and we didn't sit around having coffee together, like, I felt compelled to do something because of my proximity and almost because I was a tier 3, I could love her as she hung out and spent time and was being fully present with her tier 1s and tier 2s that showed right up. You know what I mean? So like, I could keep the coffee on, and I could stand in the kitchen and wash the dishes, and I could tend to things that didn't require me just sitting at the table with her talking. So as a tier 3, I reached out and stepped in and did what I knew how to do because I have a lot of experience with that. And over time, we literally became like a high tier 2 relationship. And I would say tier 1, but like, whatever. We probably were tier 1. I was literally, then she was diagnosed with cancer 2 years later. And then I was able to be there with her literally when she died.
Wow.
So we went from tier 3 to tier 1 because I showed up with her in, as a tier 3 in the time when her husband died, and I just didn't leave. I mean, I kept her busy, and I involved her in projects, and I brought extra food over every night when I was feeding my own family, and I invited her to things, and I did ballet because she wanted to stay busy. I mean, I just loved her through that grief, and then became a tier 1 friend to the point where then she trusted me and allowed me in. And I wasn't like vying for that. I mean, don't hear that in what I'm saying, but what I am saying is that because we had that relationship built on respect and trust and pure service and love, that then she wanted me there and she trusted me. I helped her write her obituary. I helped her plan her funeral. I helped her write letters to her children. I sat with her, just for hours when she was at home in hospice. I mean, that's like an earned opportunity because of being brave enough to just step out and say, you know what, the right thing to do is to help this person that's grieving, even though they're a tier 3 in my life.
I love that, and I think that's very powerful, and I think also we're all connected in this universe, and every spirit is connected, every soul is connected, and the choices that we make are profound, I think, through a cyclical timeline that we have, and so it's very powerful, right. The people we choose to connect with. Sarah, if my listeners are looking to find you and to find information on you, where would they go?
SarahBeckman.org. O-R-G. So Sarah with an H, Beckman, BECKMAN.org.
That's easy. That's not bad.
Yep. And there's a place to find out about the book, and it's Amazon and all the bookstores and all the places.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to check out your second book.
Yes, I'm very excited. I'm actually working on edits this week as we speak.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to having you back on the show, and I just appreciate your knowledge, and I think this is going to really help a lot of folks out there who are, wanting to help but just don't really know what to do.
Yeah, I'm thrilled for the opportunity. Thank you, Ashley, for having me.
I enjoyed having Sarah on the show. She's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to, helping folks and being there in their time of trial. And, we do have this happen around us. We have it happen to ourselves. And I think what I've drawn from this is definitely, do what you can and do what you want to do. and give the person the opportunity to, give them options of what you can do instead of having them guess or, making them feel bad. Or because I know when people have told me, hey, let me know what I can do and how I can help, I kind of devalue myself because of, self-esteem issues that are in my own life or my responsibilities or how overwhelmed I feel or how I feel like whatever I'm going to offer is too minuscule. I feel like all these things play a part and play a role in us doing or not doing what we want to do. I find that very, very interesting. And I feel that we can't devalue our involvement. I feel that our involvement is very, very important, and we can't devalue it just because we're just going to the store or picking up a prescription at Walgreens or CVS or whatever, or, bringing their car in to get service or bringing some food over. We can't devalue that because that is a necessity that needs to be taken care of. And without that, things will fall by the wayside. So all of it is important. All of this is important, and all is a process. Another thing that I took out of this show was to be direct, be positively direct in helping people because it makes it easier for them to understand exactly what you can do and kind of how it all formulates together. And when we were talking about the levels of friendship, the 4 levels of friendship, I find that very interesting because oftentimes, we don't really understand exactly where we stand. And sometimes I think because of our self-esteem issues or because of our insecurities, we feel as though we might be a level 3 or 4 when we're not. I think that, oftentimes, because we are all solely connected in this universe and in this whole thing that we're doing here on planet Earth and being here as spirit gods, going through the process of living in a life in an actual skin body, I think that, we can choose to help who we want to help. And in the process, I think it really connects with the sophistication of a soul sophisticated society. And I think that has a predication of a very deep thought process when you think about it. And I think the more we grow a friendship, the more we grow out of 4 and 3 into 2 and 1. And I think really most of our friendships really need to be into 2 and 1. It's just how much time do you have in the day? But is that really true? I don't think that you have to see somebody day in and day out to be a close person in someone's life. I think that's a thought process in our head that we concoct or construe to define how close we are. But I think in reality, we can be very close. But, dropping in and saying hi and leaving a note or texting or doing something that, lets the other person know that you're thinking about them and that you care. When it comes to really giving back and helping people, I've realized that when I've helped people in crisis, it's directly affected me psychologically in a positive way. It might have been stressful or overwhelming at the time, but quite honestly, I really learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the situation, and I'm a better, more solid person for it. I've learned a lot. I've grown, and I've overcame adversity, and I've helped other people grow and overcome adversity and go through the process as well. And we've become stronger in our relationship. Anytime that you're there in a crisis mode for somebody, it really does directly relate to the impact of the relationship, but also it puts it at a different level. It puts our relationship at a different level because anybody can be there in the good times. Anybody can be there when things are awesome and the champagne's flowing and, the smiles and everything else, but it's when there's real stress, it's when there's a real critical situation that's taking place that we have to really kind of rise to that occasion and accept what we have to deal with. And I think that's a powerful, powerful place to be at. And I think the more that we help other people in crisis, the more that we show we value them. But I think the more we value ourselves, because all of us are going to go through crisis at some point or another, right? And we don't know necessarily when it's going to happen. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a crisis. It would be a situation that we were planning on. So we don't really know. But what I've found is that the more we do to help other people, to better their lives, to be there for them, it just seems like it's a cycle, a positive cycle of things that can help us and be very helpful for us and really turn around and create some positive, loving, powerful feelings that really engulf the people we're around in a positive, enlightening way. It's interesting. So I really feel that this show has been very powerful because I think more than ever, we need to be more of a community. We need to come together. We need to be there for one another. And I think there is no time like the present. And I have, a couple of thoughts of my own on this subject. First off is get to know the folks that you live around. Whether you live in a condo building, whether you live in a townhome, whether you live in a house in the city or in the suburbs or in the rural areas, getting to know the people around you, getting to know them, being, caring about them enough to check on them, being responsible for the people around you, and making sure they're okay. I know everybody I live around. I know everybody I work around. I know their kids, their family, their mother, their father. I know that stuff, and I know that because I care. I know that because that information was given to me because people know that I care and I'm there for them, and vice versa. And it works both ways, and it's a very powerful place to be when you know everybody. And I know some of you say, well, you know what? It's not my personality, Ashley, to really put myself out there, and it kind of scares me to talk or whatever. And I understand that. But getting out of our comfort zone when it comes to this can be a very successful, powerful position to be in a pleasant way, because you know your surroundings, you know the people in your surroundings, you're there for them, they're there for you. It's a great place to be. And you learn from other people, and it becomes more of a village. And I prefer to live in a village. I think a village is cool. Everybody knows one another. You help one another. You're there for each other in the good and the bad times. And it's a great place to be. And I like to live my life like that. And that's the way I like to live. That's the way I like to be. And, it's been, I guess all my life I've always felt this way. Even when I was a kid, we lived on the street, and it was like a horseshoe type street where the street went around, and it kind of, curved like the U, like the horseshoe, and went around to the other street. And I knew all my neighbors, and I was a kid, and I remember even at 8 and 9 years old, my neighbors would come by the house, and they were going out of town on a summer vacation or whatever, and they'd ask me to watch their house, and I would. I was a kid, and I appreciated doing that. And I know some of you say, well, you're an extrovert. Well, I'm also an introvert too, but I liked really getting to know people and caring about them and their situation. And, that I didn't realize at the time that would also bring, good positive karma and good things to me as well. And so it's not about doing things for that reason, but it's really doing things just to get to know people and to live the human condition with other people. And I think it's powerful. And I'm so glad that Sarah came on the show and offered her expertise on, I think, a critical situation that many of us question ourselves, and we don't do what we do because we're scared of pushing someone. We kind of feel like we might not be at the level we think we are with them. And I think a lot of times, like she said in that chapter, it's not all about you. And I think in these situations, we need to kind of take ourselves out, step back, and be of servitude to somebody in their time of need. And I think that speaks volumes about where we are mentally, emotionally, and it also helps that other person in a way that we might never imagine. Thank you for tuning in. Check out the new shows on Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Apple, SoundCloud, everything in between. And if you have questions on where to find the show, go to ashleyburgess.com, Ashley, BERGES.com. There's a wealth of knowledge on the website and information, as well as check out my YouTube channel. Go to Ashley, BERGES. Watch the latest videos that go up every single week on different topics about relationships, marriage, overcoming adversity, dealing with tough bosses, recognizing narcissists in your life. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess. Will be back this time. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.